This is Matt Rosen, and this is The Grit Mindset with me, your host, Matt Rosen. The mission of The Grit Mindset is to inspire and empower our listeners by delving deep into the journeys of those who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger. Through authentic conversations, we uncover the mindsets, strategies, and lessons that have propelled these individuals to overcome adversity and achieve success. My aim is to provide actionable insights and real-world advice to help our listeners cultivate their own grit and navigate their personal and professional lives with confidence and resilience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of The Grit Mindset. I'm especially excited to have with me Jeremy Thompson. He is the Executive Director of the Special Operations Association of America. Jeremy, welcome to The Grit Mindset.
Thanks, Matt. We appreciate you having me.
Yeah, so tell us about SOAA and what you guys do for us.
So the Special Operations Association of America is a DC-based veterans nonprofit. We set up in the early 2000s as a veteran advocacy organization, and we have branched out into several other legs and projects since then to cover down on things that keep America safe, anything from national security advisory to NGO operations around the world.
Got it. And some of our listeners might not know what a special operator is, so talk about that a little bit, would you?
Yeah, so most people are going to relate us to the special operations arena, the Tier 1 assets or the Tier 2 assets for the United States military, the Army Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Air Force Special Operations, PJs, JTACs, Marine Raiders, even other government agencies and intelligence apparatus.
So those are the people really on the front line defending our freedoms.
Yes, sir. Often far behind enemy lines and self-sufficient.
Yeah, and why did you guys get this organization started? What was the impetus behind it?
So as a co-founder with our founder, Daniel Elkins, he and I worked in and around the DC area and other veteran service organizations and identified that there was a little bit of a gap in organizations that were specified or contoured towards certain advocacy. But there was no one specifically covering advocacy for all special operations components for our military branches.
Got it. Well, it's a great service you provide our country, which we all appreciate. Thank you. And so glad there's an organization that supports those that have done that. So I don't think you woke up one day and said, hey, I want to be the executive director. I know you had a distinguished intelligence career, but maybe take us back to the beginnings and what got you on this path.
Yes, 22 years in military service. Several of those years were Special Operations Intelligence with the Green Beret A teams or either at battalion or upper echelon group level. And just the relationships that I've built over time and the people I've been in company of and what I've learned just seem to open one door after another, which is how Daniel and I ended up linking up, establishing a friendship and a professional understanding of one another. And he reached out to me one day and said, how do you feel about an executive director position? I said, hey, let's run with it. You know, let's see what we can do to advance the organization and grow it and scale it. And we're very proud of where we're at, very proud of where we're going. Yeah,
I'm glad to be involved with it. So as it pertains to your military career, did you grow up knowing you want to be in the military? How did that come about?
I often tell people that I think I made that determination at 5 years old. Really? And people say, there's no way you decided at 5 years old you're going to be in the military. So my grandfathers on both paternal and maternal sides had time in Korea, Vietnam, World War II, multiple months in combat. One was a World War II combat medic. The other one served in the infantry and had several months in combat between Korea and Vietnam. Wow. So I got to watch that, feel it, you know, as a child. The movies, the early 80s movies were very compelling. And I said,
Platoon or Rambo.
Yeah, all of them, for sure. Chuck Norris, was a thing. And I thought, man, I really want to participate in that one day. I was already kind of, proud of what I knew about it, even as a 5, 6, 7-year-old. But I grew more proud of it over time. And, I love this country. I think it's the greatest nation on earth.
Agreed.
Certainly worth serving, defending, and dying for if necessary.
Yeah. So at 5 years old, you knew that was a path you were going to take. So tell us a little bit about what you can of your childhood and what got you ultimately to the service.
Yeah. So I think we're often framed psychologically and ideologically by our parents or our grandparents. What makes somebody a liberal or conservative, a moderate, independent, whatever. And so many factors go into that. But I came from a blue-collar family where my mom worked as an operator for the telephone company, and my father was a truck driver. He was tragically killed in a trucking accident in 1984. I was 5 years old. My brother was 2. My parents were both 26 years old, and I accepted death at an early age. On top of any military aspirations or pride that I had in my family military history, I started understanding that life is not forever, and started gaining an early understanding of the importance of shaping yourself in a direction that's going to make some kind of sense or contribute to society or the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's what framed and shaped my way forward.
Well, it's awful to have lost your father at such a young age. So did your mom raise you and your
She did.
siblings?
She did. She was a very tough lady. We talk about that often. She had very little room for error. Certainly, you were going to be respectful of her and others, and there were little nuanced societal things that she just didn't allow in our house. And I think she did a really good job of setting a really good standard and making sure that we were adhered to it.
Yeah, so she had to demonstrate a lot of grit to get through that, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, she was faced with the impossible. There's families out there right now that are going to be listening to this that have experienced something similarly tragic, and you got to find your way through it. You got to know that there's light on the other end. And,
yeah.
Often some people dwell on what happened to them, and they become a victim. And I guess what I would do is encourage people to find what's gonna make the situation better.
And how were you all able to do that as a family?
She was very gritty. She come from a very poor background, so she knew if she was going to have something better, she was going to have to work for it. And she instilled that in me and my brother. So as she raised us, failure was not an option. Even though she knew you had to fail to learn,
right?
Staying in the failure was not going to be an option.
Yeah. So you grew up in a single mom household. What ultimately drove you, or what was the path that you took to get into the military?
Yeah. So when I was a senior in high school, you do career interest inventories.
Yeah.
And you do multiples sometimes to determine what path guidance counselors should put you on as you decide to go into college or military, or maybe just go into the workforce. And every one that I took put me in a service industry, specifically public safety. So I was supposed to be a firefighter, a paramedic, a police officer, or serve in the military. And life has been really good to me. I say God's been good to me. I'm a faith-based individual, and God's been good to me to allow me to do each one of those things. And that's a unique story in itself. But I've been a volunteer firefighter for going over 20 years now. EMT, emergency medical technician. I'm a reserve deputy sheriff with my local sheriff's department. I've served under 4 or 5 sheriffs now.
No kidding.
And on top of all that, I still got to serve in 22 years on active duty Title 32.
Where do you find the time to do all that?
I know I get asked that all the time, and the only thing I can tell you is God makes my schedule and allows me to participate where I can, and it's always been in a way that mattered. And just developed me and put me where I'm at.
Which one of those do you think has been the most difficult or challenging?
Definitely my military career.
Yeah.
Obviously it puts you abroad in very austere environments. I like to think that I'm a problem solver. I tell people I don't have an engineering degree, but a lot of times I can look at a problem or a project and find a really solid end state.
Got it. So how did your military career begin? Where did you do basic, and maybe take us through a little of that evolution?
Yeah, that's unique too. So I enlisted in September of 2000, which put me in the training pipeline moving into early 2001. We all know what happened later in 2001. So I went to basic training, and then I was applied for a TSSCI, which is a top secret sensitive compartmented information security clearance, because I was going into a special operations intelligence position with the Special Forces. So during my basic training time, I had not had time for that investigation to take place.
And you were Army, right?
Army, correct. Yes, sir. So they said, hey, we're going to send you to airborne school to give more time for the security clearance to come back, and then we'll send you to the Army Intelligence Training Center out at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So Fort Benning, airborne school, graduated airborne school, went out to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. I was at Fort Huachuca, Arizona in Army intelligence training when the World Trade Centers got hit and the attacks on D.C. and Philadelphia took place. And immediately, out of 300 and something intelligence students out there that would go out to elements all across the Army, myself and another guy were pulled out into the hallway, and they said, "Hey, your units are going to be alert mobilized. You're going to Afghanistan in response to this attack."
So how quickly did they have you over there?
So every unit goes through a train-up period, whether you're active duty, reserve component, or National Guard, before you go into kind of combat or wartime theater. So we did go through a train-up period. 5th Special Forces Group set up Task Force Dagger in Karshi-Khanabad, Uzbekistan, with then Colonel Mulholland. And my unit backfilled that unit in September of 2002.
Okay. And, I've gotten to know you over the years and understand you were part of, the famous horse soldiers. You allowed to tell us about that?
Yeah, so Siege of Sotif North and South, Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, was headquartered in Bagram. That was overseen by an 06 full colonel, and then he reported to a 1 or 2 star general, I think McNeil at the time. And multiple components of that Joint Special Operations Task Force. But it was kind of divided north and south. Across the north, the Army Green Berets had, if I recall correctly, 15 teams from Herat to Asadabad, Jalalabad. If you were operating north central in the mountains, you could almost only operate by 4-wheel drive vehicle, and in many cases horseback. So I ended up on a team that had to utilize horses for their missions and ride village to village doing unconventional warfare and counterterrorism operations.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so it's unique because 5th Special Forces Group let us know that we were going to need guys who had pack animal experience. And if you didn't have guys that had it, you might want to go get it.
Did you grow up riding horses?
I did. I grew up on horse farms in South Central Tennessee and had a lot of familiarity. One of my jobs as a senior in high school was working in a draft horse farm. But they picked 8 of us out of our battalion to go to farrier school in Mentone, Alabama. And we went to the Lookout School of Horseshoeing and Pack Animal Course. And we all got certificates that say Special Forces School of, Horseshoeing or something like that. It was really odd and unique at the time. We still talk about it 20 years later. But they knew that when we got forward, certain teams were going to have to operate by pack animal, either mule or horse. And what an honor to have been part of that and bring home the stories and the pictures, and just such a small community, but very honored to be a part of it.
Yeah. As you reflect through, your 22 years in the military, share with us beyond that, maybe some of the grittier, more challenging things you had to overcome or that you saw that you can share with the audience.
Yeah, when you ask that, I think I reflect on the combat time, right? So I was an all-source intelligence analyst, so technically speaking, I should have been on a headquarters somewhere interpreting information and doing battalion commander or group commander updates. And I had the fortune, in my opinion, looking back on it, of being assigned to a Green Beret A team for ground operations. And I like to think that I was an asset to that team, or it never would have happened. But in doing that, you get exposed to a lot of things out on the ground, things that are happening in real time. Little time to sleep. You find yourself in snow and ice conditions, either by horseback, pack mule, or Toyota Hilux trucks contracted out of Europe. Some of the most dangerous missions we went on were just trying to get those trucks over the mountain and not fall off at 9,000 feet.
Wow.
We actually had a contracted truck fall off the mountain one night on an operation. And, we had, members of our organization, team members, get shot or blown up, sustain critical injuries there on the battlefield. I think I shared with you earlier, my battalion commander at the time was doing team house visits, health, welfare, and morale visits on Thanksgiving Day of 2002, ambushed between Coast and Gardez, shot in the process, medevaced, went out, got patched up and came right back to the battlefield. Didn't take his leave of absence. He could have went home, been with family if he wanted to, but he came back, and as a result, he went on and promoted to 1-star general and became deputy commander at Special Forces Command Fort Bragg.
So when that happens, I mean, you're way grittier than most of the guests I have on this show. I mean, we've all been through a lot, but I mean, watching a group of contractors fall off a cliff, watching people get shot or blown up, like, what do you tell yourself to keep going in those situations?
You know, I got to evaluate Navy SEALs, CIA Ground Branch, Special Forces Green Berets out operational on the battlefield, and they put us through so much training, whether it's physical, psychological, operational. So you feel like you got what it takes when you go. But one of the things that was unique to me, I think, is I had exposure to critical incidents prior to going to Afghanistan as an EMT firefighter. You know, in my hometown, I saw people prior to going to Afghanistan. I already saw people that had been shot, stabbed, run over.
You probably had to code people. Yeah.
Traumatic injuries I'd already been exposed to. So psychologically, I had that time frame to adjust, I think, where some of those guys didn't. I mean, they may be some of the most high-speed, highly trained people on the planet, but then you put them in a submerged environment where things are really, really bad or really, really critical, and they witness a single incident. It's hard for them to psychologically process, and sometimes it caused, shutdown and, the need to reset or go regroup.
Were you able, based on your experience, to help instill grit in others and resilience in others within your unit?
I hope so. I was a young guy, so I was kind of junior to the team I was assigned to. But I had this odd ability to develop and establish relationships and share experiences, talk about stories in a way that resonated with people. And it's all about psychological resilience. You have to get through things. You can let people mess with you, shape you, frame you, or you can have more influence on that than they do. I've always chosen to try to have more influence on that than the people around me. But I think if I reflected back on the people I got to serve with, I hope they would say that I had some positive impact.
That's great. Well, obviously you're on the grit mindset, and I ask every guest, what does grit mean to you?
The first word that comes to mind is resilience. You're going to be faced with who knows what in the next 12 to 24 hours. I always say tragedy is just a phone call away or right around the corner. If you're walking on the street, you never know what you're going to encounter next. So are you psychologically prepared to take on that next challenge, however tragic or horrific it may be? It may be that phone call that a family member's been involved in an accident or maybe potentially even killed. How are you going to respond to that? Are you going to be the person that completely flips and doesn't know what they're going to do next? Or have you put some time and consideration into a situation like that to where you can apply some logic and thought and get yourself through it?
And is that something you learned in your training, or is that just something you inherently have? For those listening that are now thinking about, oh my gosh, what if I get that phone call? How am I going to react? How did you get trained to where you were able to handle these situations, which seems like a level of calm and grace? Yeah.
So I think my exposure to my father getting killed at 5 years old and watching how adults responded to that, 'cause some didn't handle it so well.
Yeah.
I don't recall crying. I recall being heartbroken, obviously, and sad about it, but I don't recall crying because I was evaluating my circumstances. I knew what they were telling me. My father wasn't coming home.
Yeah.
As a 5-year-old, I was trying to process that. So in processing that built some of my early psychological resistance, right, to tragedy or trauma. And everybody responds differently, based on a number of things, I imagine. But I think I processed it fairly well. And it was, at that point, it was a tool in my toolbox that I could use, hopefully, to positively impact my life, but the lives of others.
Well, it's inspiring that you're able to take such a tragic event and turn it into really a strategic advantage for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think so.
As rough as it was.
Yes, sir.
So you spent how long in Afghanistan?
We were there right at the 10, 11 month mark.
Okay.
And I recall guys getting mid-tour leave to go do whatever. You could go back home, you could go to Europe, you could do whatever you wanted to for that 2 weeks. And I had applied for mine. I'd let my family know that I was coming home out of an operational environment. And my battalion commander had already selected me for a mission that I did not anticipate, I did not know about. So he wrote in Sharpie, disapproved from corner to corner. It was red Sharpie, corner to corner, DA 31 leave form. And I thought, man, I've got to call my family and let them know that I'm not coming home now because it's going to be operationally important that I'm there. And I wouldn't have changed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously you had a very distinguished career, was part of a very important, first boots on the ground mission in Afghanistan, doing what we had to do there. Talk about how you any other interesting stories that you went through later in your career, and then how ultimately you transitioned out of the military. Because I know talk about that, because I know it's very difficult for a lot of operators who are used to being in the thick of things, high adrenaline, then going to more of a civilian type of life.
Yeah, I think that's super important that we keep that alive in conversation across this country, because we often talk about operator syndrome or PTSD or depression, or the psychological challenges that soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines go through when they're transitioning. I would encourage those who go and serve a lifetime of military service, or whether they're on a 4 or 6 year contract, don't let the military become your identity. Mm-hmm. Always keep your own identity. Yeah. At the end of 20 years, the military you enlisted in is not going to be the same one anyway. It's going to have changed. Sure. You're going to have adapted. You're going to have made changes professionally, psychologically, or otherwise. So don't let anything become your identity to where you dwell on it, or you're so dependent on it that it becomes a challenge for you. So when I made the decision to leave and transition out of the military, I started exploring, what am I going to do? I love the DOD apparatus. I love national security. I love this country. Yeah. So how do I continue to serve that? And I've done that through veteran advocacy. I've done that through serving in the intelligence apparatus. And it's been super fulfilling for me. So for those who are going to walk that path, what is it that motivates you? What inspires you? Go out and let what you did to serve our nation continue to serve you, I guess. Yeah. Not from a selfish perspective, but just a professional one. We all have to do something to keep the bills paid. Sure. So when you transition, I would just say, don't limit yourself. Go out and find something that you're good at, that you like doing, and continue to do it.
And if I'm not mistaken, your organization also helps operators in finding new opportunities as well.
We work every day to make sure that we're doing as much as we can to serve the special operations community across the spectrum. If that means helping with a hardship, an encountered hardship, or bridging the gap in employment, health care, psychological welfare, all those things we're very much engaged in. We get calls every day from each of those avenues of life, and we want to be the best we can at it.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, you've got a couple of children of your own, correct? How do you think about raising them and teaching them grit? I don't know if either of them have a military career plan, but how do you think about that?
Yeah, so we live on a small farm in Fayetteville, Lincoln County, Tennessee. Yeah. And when you and I were speaking earlier, I said we need to make sure that we mention that, because Lincoln County, Fayetteville, Tennessee was founded in 1809, and John Neely Bryan was born there. And he is the founder of Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, where we're sitting right now. That's amazing.
Right. So that's my connection to Dallas. But my kids were raised on that small farm with a couple of hard standards. Two things we didn't tolerate in my house were blatant disrespect, or something that would get you or somebody else hurt. Right, a safety violation. So we talk about it even now. My kids now are 13 and 18. A younger daughter, older son. And they tell their friends, like, if you wanted a whipping at my house, violate, blatant disrespect or safety.
Seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah. It wasn't that hard. They latched on pretty easily, and they reflect on it now in a way that's made them better people. They're super respectful. They're super ambitious. They're involved in all the school activities. I've got one fixing to go to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Awesome. He got his acceptance letter, I think, about 5 days ago.
Oh,
so we're excited about that.
That's great. And you have a restaurant as well, is that right?
My wife and I opened a restaurant after the Trump administration got elected and started reducing the government footprint. So she and I both worked, prior to me taking this position, when she and I both worked for the government off Redstone Arsenal. I was on a contract. She was a GS employee. And she was the international team lead for the Patriot missile defense program between the United States and Poland. They offered what they called the Deferred Resignation Program, DRP. And we support the reduction of government footprint, less government. We're capitalists, so we believe in capitalism, and we're also conservatives. So we said, hey, why not? Let's do what we need to do to go out and support this administration and this initiative. So we opened a restaurant from an entrepreneurial vision and perspective. Didn't know anything about the industry, never worked in it. And so far, we've been open since September the 25th, and it's proven to be super successful.
What's the name of it?
The Revolutionary Tavern. We have a website.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, and we're in Fayetteville, Tennessee, and we're drawing crowds from North Alabama, north of Nashville, off the interstate. We get people from all over the place, and it's super fun to interact with people and learn where they've come from.
Oh, well, that takes a lot of grit. I had a podcast about it. That did not end well.
Oh,
but I
really?
guess it's going well for you guys so far?
Yeah, so far so good for us. And we reflect on being faith-based and grounded. This is a reflection on our faith, and God's been good to us, and I feel like He's going to continue to be.
Yeah, well, I hope the restaurant continues to do well, and good luck to your son at the University of Tennessee. That's awesome. So as we're kind of wrapping up here on the Grit Mindset, are there any other stories you can share, or just experiences you've had that kind of gotten you where you are here today? Anything we didn't talk about?
I said a long time ago that if I got the opportunity to speak in front of a crowd of people, I would always talk about our Creator.
Yeah.
And I believe that's important, regardless of what your faith is, to be faith-based and grounded. We're so disconnected as a society right now. We're at each other's throats over ideological differences. And I talk about like what makes you who you are, or what you believe. I'm not Chinese.
Yeah.
But I'm not mad at the Chinese unless somebody influences that or tells me I have to be, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be American. And in wanting to be American, I want to be a patriot of my nation, be able to pray to who I believe created me. With little or no interruption.
And you fought for our freedom to do that.
I think so, and we have a responsibility to be good to one another. At the end of the day, the politics aside, ideological differences aside, can we wake up tomorrow and try to find a way to be good to the people around us and expect something in return?
Yeah, well, I think most people have more in common than they recognize.
Absolutely, and that's where we got to get back to at some point. I get polarization on certain issues to get things, I guess, passed or legislated, but I believe at the end of the day we've got to get back to some level of neutral. And
I believe you're thinking about in the future figuring out other ways you can serve our country. I don't know if you can talk about that yet.
I have this very clear ambition to run for the United States Congress. I don't know what timelines are going to look like right this second. I think it's probably nearer than future.
Yeah.
We're already talking about that, trying to see what team building, maybe what a campaign may look like.
Yeah.
And we're excited about that. But again, that's a faith-based calling, something that I've been entertaining and talking about since 2016. So we'll see. We see what doors open between now and then, and what we can do if we get there.
We'll be looking forward to your campaign if that moves forward. Well, as we kind of wrap up this episode, any kind of closing thoughts around grit and resilience you can share with our listeners, or another question I often ask, and I'm kind of conflating these two, is anything you'd tell your 5-year-old self?
Yeah, I was very judgmental as a child, like from a position of righteousness, maybe purity. Like even through high school, I didn't participate in the things that other people were participating in, whether it be drinking or, drugs weren't big in my area. They're there. But I had this mindset where I'm not going to participate in that because I feel like it leads nowhere good, right? So what are you going to participate in? Let's participate in things that help others. Yeah. And it's naturally rewarding when you can go out and help somebody or make a positive impact or difference in somebody's life. So, if you're depressed or you can't quite find your way, what purposes you, what directs you, what motivates you? When you wake up tomorrow, are you going to dwell on your circumstances, or are you going to change them? Yeah. I'm always changing my circumstances, hopefully for the better. I believe in inspiring the room when you walk into it. Positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity. Yeah. Your thoughts are things, and that's what this podcast is all about, is hopefully inspiring our listeners to do a little bit more and, take the next step and
think about the positive outcomes. Know that negative ones could happen, but you just got to keep charging forward.
Resilience and grit, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for making the time to come from Tennessee to be on the Grit Mindset. It's glad to have you as a friend, and thank you for coming and sharing the message. It's very inspiring, and hopefully to all of our listeners out there, you can take something away from Jeremy's story. We thank you for your service to this country, and until next week's episode of the Grit Mindset, stay gritty.